Oh, this feels like a serious altered state of consciousness right now. You all know, I think, or those of you who know me, that I'm good at bluffing these things, and I find it impossible to really think about what I'm going to say until I get up here and start saying something. I did go around my table asking everybody for different thoughts about how to open this, because I am not accustomed to receiving awards. I think the last time was my bar mitzvah, and that was painful. That was actually one of the lines. Somebody asked to just start with a joke. How many members of the Drug Policy Foundation does it take to screw in a light bulb? But we couldn't really come up with an answer. And then somebody said, well, that's really not the right question, because given the absence of a light bulb, the question really is, how do you minimize the harms associated with the darkness? Thank you, Harry. Now, I have to say that standing up here, it does feel somewhat premature. I mean, this is the Alfred Lindesmith Award, who was really one of the forefathers, the godfathers, the pathbreakers in this field. And you think about the others, Rufus King and Edward Brecker and Grinspoon and Bacalar and Sass and Friedman and Andy Weil and Norman Zinberg. And we all know that if the foundation were allowed to give awards to its own officers, Arnold Trebach is the one who should be standing up here this year for all the work that he's done. But the fact is, I also look at other people here. I look at Steve Wysotsky and Craig Reinerman and John Morgan and Marcia Rosenbaum and a whole lot of other people, as well as people from Canada and Australia and others. And I say, this really is too soon. I do want to stay with this and keep working. I got lucky with a few articles, and I'm very happy to have had the opportunity to make an impact and to shape the way people think about these issues. Now, when I first popped into this area and started showing up at DPF conferences in 1987, and the first one in London, and then in 88, people didn't know who I was. And they asked, what are you doing here and why are you here? And I explained, well, I was at Harvard and I did this dissertation, and well, what did you do it on? Well, I worked in the State Department's Bureau of International Narcotics Matters. I don't know if you know that. And I was a consultant with a security clearance and wrote a classified report on drug trafficking and money laundering. And I had the good fortune to travel around the world interviewing American drug enforcement agents and what they do. And that was some of my other work. And the line I gave was, well, I studied all this, and I eventually came to the conclusion that this was all misbegotten and foolish and misdirected, and it's really I came to this conclusion as an academic, sitting back and looking at this. And the truth is, that's not how it happened. When I was doing this research and interviewing these drug enforcement agents, I knew what they were doing, and I knew what was wrong with it. And I listened to the very nice people I became friends with in the State Department's Narcotics Bureau, saying, mushrooms? What's mushrooms? And biting my tongue and just not explaining things so that I could do my research. But the fact is, there's two really basic reasons why I came to care about this issue. We can go into the underlying psychoanalysis at some other time, but the two issues that I'm aware of, and I just want to talk about those a little bit and to be somewhat personal about this, because I usually don't speak about these things when I do my debates and speeches. And the first one really is, I grew up in a pretty traditional Jewish moral household. Thanks, Mom. And when I was 5 years old, my mom said to me, Ethan, when you grow up, I want you to go out there and legalize drugs. No. I finally got you back, Ma. No, she actually didn't really say that. But the truth of it was, I did grow up with this fairly strong moral sense, I think, although my mom might not have recognized that I had that moral sense when I was growing up. And I just remember, sort of a late bloomer, going to college. And I did this at Montreal and McGill, and driving up across the border. And I met some friends, and we started smoking marijuana. And it was really very nice. Enjoyable, interesting. It didn't seem to affect my grades. I was still a good student, nor did it affect the grades of other people. And I just got to thinking, what the hell's going on here? I can get stopped at the border and thrown in jail. I can get arrested. The cops can come into my house, my apartment, and arrest me. And it was just that sense of being morally offended. There's something wrong here. I know there's something wrong here. And you begin to look around and look at other groups. And, also you have empathy for gays. I mean, you grow up, you don't think about it sometimes. But, homosexuals have rights too, and other people have rights. And there's something wrong here. And then, and I was a political scientist, and I read John Stuart Mill when I was 19. And that sure resonated. Self-regarding and other regarding behavior. Well, this was a self-regarding behavior. And let's remember there's some basic principles here. And that stuck with me. It stuck with me in different ways. And I have to say that my life in academia never really felt right until I sort of was able to connect with that. Now, there's a second reason. And, sorry, I didn't hear that. There's a second reason, and it really has to do with a sense of my own Jewishness and Judaism, and how I perceive that, and how that leads to my own view of the world. And it has to do. My father was a rabbi, no longer alive. My father was a rabbi, and who believed in a certain brand of Judaism known as Reconstructionism, and it emphasized the idea of Judaism as evolving civilization. And it was this idea, when we were brought up, me and my two brothers and my sister, we were brought up with a very strong notion of Jewish history. Right? I mean, it was Jewish history, not just the Bible, but Jewish history in Europe and all around the world. And we learned one very simple thing, or many simple things, but one that really sticks with me right now, which is that Jews always did okay. They might have to worry about assimilation, but basically they always did okay when they lived in a society where the majority tolerated a minority. Said, you can be different, you can be deviant, but we accept you. And then wherever they lived in a land where the majority said, no, you have to do things our way. You have to believe in our God or our vision of God. And not only do you have to do it for our sake, you have to do it for your sake. It's for your own good that you should buy into our moral vision. That whenever they said that, the Jews were fucked. They were really... Now I remembered that. And fortunately, in this society, Jews don't really have to worry that much anymore. But there are people who are like the Jews of the past. And this is where, Thomas Sass, his radical libertarianism, I can't go along with his solutions. It's just too extreme. But he understood basic fundamental cores about this. When he talked about the boogeymen of society and the scapegoats and pointed to the witches and pointed to the homosexuals and pointed to the Jews and said the drug users and even the drug dealers of today fall into the same category. They may look different and smell different, and they may look and smell no differently than the rest of us, but they're being persecuted in the same way. Well, that basic moral sense is something I can't forget. Now, when I'm here, we obviously have this two groups right here. We have, on the one hand, the free market libertarians, the Milton Friedmaneskians and the Thomas Sassians and everybody else, and the Catoites, who are wonderful allies. But then there's another group of which I'm a part, which is the social justice libertarians. And one thing that we all keep in common is that there is this basic ethical idea. I can reel out the policy analysis better than anybody. And I can also point out how what goes for objective public policy analysis has its own ethical assumptions just as my analysis does. But I can do that whole public policy analysis, and I can make the argument for legalization to people who don't understand the basic ethical arguments. But what's so wonderful about this organization, and why I'm so grateful to Arnold and Kevin for creating it, and for Richard Dennis to being so generous with it, why I'm so grateful is that this is an organization of people who understand a small minority that's hopefully going to grow to be one day a majority in this country and others, who understand a basic ethical idea about tolerance and the acceptance of deviance, about human rights in the context of American society, and how that relates to drugs. So I just want to thank you all very much. I want to thank my family. And I just want to wish us all hope. I think Clinton is a wonderful possibility. I don't want to get my hopes up, but the 90s are going to be an interesting time. Thanks a lot.